How was the first day of popping pads?
It was good. It's you guys know this. It's always feels real when the pads are on and they're hitting, and I always like watching the pass rush drills between the linemen, and you can get just a better sense of things in the 11 on 11 drills. I thought it was another kind of shaky day for the offense. We saw a few false starts. We got to, by the way, kind of experience why it's so challenging for the offense when Andrew Billings yells move right before the snap, because where we were located was right on the ball, and they get under center. And Billings is a pretty soft-spoken guy around us, and he yells move, and like the whole place kind of startles. And we saw one or two false starts that I don't know if it was directly related to that, but it certainly seemed to be to coincide with his barking that out. The offense, I will say though, did have a nice 2 minute drill end a half. Caleb Williams threw a touchdown to finish that off, because they've had a couple ones that haven't ended in scores the last couple of days. So yeah, it's just it's day one. I imagine it'll ramp up a little bit tomorrow, but it's been fun to see kind of that offense defense coaches jawing at each other. We saw like a mini, not even a scuffle, today between the couple defensive linemen and Gerald Everett. Caleb Williams got in there, so yeah, it was a fun day.
What have the offensive players said about Billings doing that?
Yeah, so I asked Coleman Shelton about it today. So I was like, that's gotta be annoying when you're out there practicing, but it's also helps them. And he said he has not heard a single player in the league do it the way that Andrew Billings does it. And it's very startling. And for them, they just have to lock in on Caleb's voice. Like they just have to, and Caleb and Andrew Billings have different voices. But it's like he said, Andrew Billings' voice is different, but it just startles you. And you just have to be ready. And there's certain keys I think they can pick up on where if the defense is in a certain alignment, they can maybe be ready for it. But he goes, look, we're going to be on the road. There's going to be tons of noise, tons of things we can't control. Players are going to do things like that. So it just gets them ready. But I imagine there's this kind of tug of war where like he said the right things, like he's like, this is going to help us get better. But I'm sure the offense just wants to be able to run their plays and not have the false starts.
Help me understand. Does him yelling move at the snap have a function other than disruption?
So when I saw him do it today, Dan, when he yelled move, the D line literally shifted. So if you could picture,
Yeah,
just a
sure.
D line, shifting before a snap, that's what they did. So, he could argue like, I'm just telling my guys to move. And that's what they did. But you can understand the offensive line, they hear that loud noise and they're waiting for Caleb's cadence, and they could jump, they could be startled by it. So that's what that just watching it today. I mean, now I think all of us are going to be kind of keyed into it and try to listen for it more and watch more and learn more about
Because
it.
there's a rules issue there.
Correct.
Yes.
You are,
He's
Yes.
echoing. He's playing to the echo of the whistle
yeah,
with
that's
that one.
that. I do think
That's
that
some
that
AJ Przinsky type
it is.
stuff.
That's also the kind of thing where before a game, an opposing coach is going to mention to the referee and the umpire, like, "Hey, he does this. Make sure it's not in violation of anything, because you're not allowed to use vocal cues to try to induce a false start from the other side of the ball."
Right. Yeah. You can't mimic like a quarterback's cadence like that. You can't do things like that. So, I mean, Billings has been in the league for a while. So I imagine I can't remember. I don't think he's ever been flagged for it. So I imagine he's gotten pretty good at it. Now that I'm talking about it, now that we're all writing about it today, maybe it's one of those things that gets more publicized. But these are things that coaches around the league, they all know. It's something. I mean, Tevin Jenkins actually talked about it with us in the spring, and when he yelled move, the entire media room like shook. Like again, it's just very, you can understand the startling nature of it. But I think that's, Billings is a savvy guys. I imagine they find a way to as you said, just get right up to the line without crossing it.
Speaking of cadence, now that you get a chance to watch it in padded 11 on 11 or 7 on 7, does Caleb look like he feels more comfortable, and are the offensive players reacting as such?
Yeah, I would say so, Lawrence. I mean, as I said today, yesterday had a couple false start issues, but it's hard for us to know necessarily how much of that is cadence, how much is that something defense doing, is somebody just off. I'll say this about like, as much as the offense has maybe not been as smooth or consistent the last 2 days, like you don't really see anything from Caleb Williams that would make you think that something is amiss. Like there's not, you know, you hear a lot about his poise. I mean, they just might move on to the next play, and he's very much like that. And we haven't seen, any kind of him getting upset with players and things like that. So I do think the cadence thing has definitely gotten better. It's hard for me to point to that as the reason that the offense has just been a little shaky the last 2 days in some of these drills. Yesterday they were in the red zone a lot, and that's obviously tougher. You're shortening the field a little bit today. First time with pads on. There's going to maybe be some hiccups against a veteran defense. But yeah, from what we've seen, certainly since training camp started, I mean, everything's been pretty smooth.
Did the energy get ramped up before that first drill today, or is an Eberflus team more low key than some of the screaming maniacal coaches that we may remember?
It's a little bit more low key, Dan. I will say that early on in practice, we did get to see kind of angry Flus, which we don't see very often.
Angry at what?
The whatever defensive group was running out there for their role in a drill did not get out to their spots quickly enough. That he did not. It's from my vantage point, he did not see the hustle that he wanted to see. And I put my baseball coach hat on. You remember that time they all take the field, and you tell them all come back to the bench, and you take the field the way you're supposed to take the field.
Wow.
So you saw that today. I saw that once, and I hadn't really seen that from Flus before. But it's hard to like I remember some of those days in Bourbonnais when it was like the first padded practice, and you've got like maybe 10,000 fans or so they claimed there, and the music starts, and it's the first rep of pads.
Yeah.
It's a little hard to replicate that at Haugh just because of the number of people there.
No, that's what I'm talking. I'm talking about where everybody knows. Here we go.
Yeah, you can kind of feel it on a lesser level than the days back at Olivet Nazarene University. And I will say, once they got into a rhythm and the defense starts getting loud and the coaches start getting loud, then I think everybody starts to get into it from the fan. And that's one of my favorite things about training camp going back years. It's the funniest thing for the fans because they're always rooting for the offense.
Yep.
And it's just this wild dynamic where you have, I mean, if you're a Bears fan, you're just, what do you do? But they're naturally going to root for the offense.
Fish, I talk about this all the time, and Dan and I were actually joking about it earlier in the show. I was at a practice. The Bears defense had won. Mike Brown comes over to me like during practice, and he goes, we're Bears too. Like, they should be cheering for us when we do something good on defense.
Yeah, where the media was in the bleachers today, we were about like the last 4 rows of a fan bleachers, and when they got lined up for the first snap of 11-on-11, some fan in front of us yelled, "Let's go, O!" And I was like, "Is anybody going to cheer for the defense? Anybody can get excited for the?" But they want to see touchdowns. They don't want to see interceptions.
Well, I guess it also, like, for forever, the offense has been the underdog of the two sides. So you're rooting. You feel like, well, they have an advantage, and this year too. Even with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, the advantage is that the defense is actually decent. The offense, there's still question marks about. So I guess you're rooting for offense, number one, and you're probably rooting for the underdog, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think that like if Caleb has a big day and there's a lot of touchdowns, you feel a lot better about the Bears. If the defense is a good day, you're like, well, that's what I would expect from this veteran defense. So, and if anybody dusts off an old Northwest Herald from late July of 2015.
As we're wont to do, as you know.
Yes. I'm sure someone's got it lying around. I remember talking to, let's remember some guys, Tracy Porter. I remember talking to him about this topic. Like, what's it like when all the fans are rooting against you and they're your fans?
It's a great question. An outstanding one.
And I unfortunately, I don't have a story in front of me. Otherwise, I just rattle off the great quotes to you guys.
Speaking of the Northwest Herald, did I read that Joe Stevenson officially retired?
Yes, the legend Joe Stevenson. He's the best.
Joe Stevenson was on the beat in Platteville when I started. He was a veteran on the beat who was always one of the nicest people, most professional guys. That's the guy McNeil used to joke about. He came up to the dorms and we were eating cold fried chicken, and we had a block of cheddar cheese that we had bought. There's a nearby dairy there near Platteville. There's a local dairy that produces the best cheeses you ever had. So I would always get there, buy a massive block of it, and stick a penknife in it. And it would always be there, and people could just walk in and carve hunks off whatever they want. My door's always open. And we would stand there in our boxer shorts, talking ball and eating chicken and cheese. And that was
This is a weird fetish thing.
Joe Stevenson was one of those dudes. If it goes back to that crew, that's the old time. That was like being in a platoon together. It felt like.
Well, there's got to be a band name out of a knife, pen, and a block of cheese.
Was it the Schulzberg Dairy? I want to say. Does that ring a bell?
You're the only one that would know. I only spent one summer in Platteville. I was a young man then. Not anymore. Anyway, Fish, that's not why you called. So to get back to what happened in practice, from individual matchups that you saw in team drills, what was interesting to you?
Well, I did want to take a look at the obviously in the trenches. I thought Gervon Dexter, for all the talk that's been around Gervon Dexter for months, had a really good day. There was a run play where he was in the backfield by the time I believe it was DeAndre Swift got the ball in his chest. That Dexter read the snap perfectly, had an inside move, and got there for the tackle for a loss. So good to see that. I thought Montez Sweat was in the backfield a lot. He had a pretty good day. As I said, it was kind of like the defense for the most part played well. The offense in the 2-minute drill before Caleb Williams' touchdown, which was a good throw on the run, got away from some pressure, found Tyler Scott in the back of the end zone. It was a 3rd and 2, quick out route to Roma Dunze with Tyreek Stevenson in coverage to get the first down. And then he threw just a strike, just an absolute missile over the middle of the field to Keenan Allen. And it was just one of those plays where, like, okay, that's the type of thing that when this offense is humming, I feel like you're going to see a lot of that, where Keenan Allen just gets to the middle of the field. Caleb Williams knows where to put the ball, and he gets in. That kind of set up the touchdown. So those are some of the good from the offense. But I said Dexter, Sweat had a good day today. Those are the kind of the two guys that stood out for me when I was watching the team drills.
We've been asking all of our Bears people this week about the opposite defensive end position. How certain are you that they have their opposite defensive end?
Well, I mean, it's funny because I don't think it's a bad thing if DeMarcus Walker is starting week 1. Like, you gave the guy a lot of money. He's put up decent numbers in his career. If you look back at the last 7 games last year, he played pretty well. He was productive. He talked about how he was hurt for most of the first 11 games last season. He wasn't at 100%. So, like, if he's your guy, I think that's fine. Like, I don't know. I really don't know if, maybe Yannick Ngakoue, who I know is visiting Carolina, gives you a little bit more. He does probably give you more pass rush juice than DeMarcus Walker does, but, like, I don't know how many guys are out there that, if Walker's playing his best, are going to be that much better. Now, if you want to talk about depth, you can have that conversation too, because if you did bring in somebody like Ngakoue or another defensive end, and DeMarcus Walker was either your starter or your number 2 there, you feel much better about the group. Jacob Martin, who's had a decent camp, he had some kind of injury that popped up today. I have no idea the severity of that, but he didn't have a full practice. And then you've got Dominique Robinson. Like, just, it's hard to necessarily sit there and be like, oh, well, he's going to break out this year, because you don't have necessarily the proof of that based on his first 2 years. So, but I said, like, if DeMarcus Walker is your guy week 1, like, I think that's okay. It's put some pressure on him to live up to it. It puts pressure on whoever's behind him. But I don't think it's the end of the world if a guy you gave a lot of money to, who was productive in the last 2 months last year, is starting opposite a guy who you expect to get double-digit sacks.
I feel like a jerk for having to ask this question, but I'm going to ask it. Was Nate Davis available for practice today?
Nate Davis was there, practiced. I don't think he missed a snap.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
And I do think, Lawrence, like, we've been talking about how Nate Davis has been there every day, and he's been practicing every snap, and that's been great. This is kind of the time, though, right? Like, how does he respond to a padded practice? So I want to see tomorrow, and I want to see after the off day. Like, it's just, you just got to keep building it. And, hopefully for the Bears, by the time you get to the season, it's just not even a story that he just had a whole summer where he practiced every day, and you just kind of forget about it, and he goes in and he's playing well. But I mean, you talk about encouraging things. The guy's been out there every single snap that he's needed to be out there. And that's, on the bar that, he's set for himself, and that's been set. That's a good thing.
Kevin, thanks, man. Much appreciated.
Take care.